Hey guys, welcome to another video. This one, I'm kind of doing a vlog for my teacher friends out there. Within the last year or so, I joined some social media groups, primarily on Facebook, for Spanish teachers or language teachers in the U.S. Or language teachers using technology in the U.S. And one of the topics that comes up quite a bit is homework and how many points is it worth, or percentage of their grade. And you'll see everything between 0, which is mine, it's 0% of their grade, up to like 15-20%. Teachers who just don't give homework anymore, or they always give homework and half credit if it's a day late. It's always different, right? It kind of depends on who you are and how you want to run it. And so I'm making this video to show you that homework does work, and that it can help a student learn and improve. Now, this is for me. Obviously, all teachers are different, the classrooms are different, the students are different, so it'll be different for all of us. But I'm going to show you how it works for me. Just kind of some topics I'm going to talk about in this video is one, on why I'm making this, 2, some grading changes, what is homework, and then my proof, statistical evidence that shows that homework can be helpful. So first of all, I'm making this video I said earlier, to show you that homework is beneficial. It does help students. When I see teachers say homework doesn't help, that's not true. Maybe if you change the way you're doing it, you gave less, it does help. So if you're giving the wrong homework, then I could totally understand that it doesn't help. I'm not saying you have to do it to be successful, but it does benefit the students if it's done right, I think. The grading changes. Recently, my district, within the last couple of years, started going through some grading changes district-wide. They brought in a consultant to talk about how we grade, look at our practices, and make sure that our grading policies are equitable amongst our students. And we were given a list of things that we could change or look at how we grade, and maybe do this or that. One of the things that I changed was my homework policy. For the longest time, I've been a teacher this is my 16th year. For the majority of that time, homework was usually worth 10% of the student's grade. And usually, if it was on time, you got 100%, no matter how well you did it. And if it was late, it was half credit right away. So now what I've changed is that homework is worth 0% of a student's grade. However, I do still assign the homework. And also, if a student doesn't pass an ELO, which is basically, it's a mastery learning concept, they have to learn, say, my class, how to conjugate an AR verb correctly in Spanish 1. They have to pass that in order to pass my class. So let's say they take a test on the AR verbs and they don't pass it. They have to come back and then retake it and earn at least a 75% on it to pass it. But prior to being able to retake it, they have to have at least a 75% on their homework, or what I call practice work, in my class. So it's 0% of their grade, but they have to do it if they don't pass the content, the subject. I'll probably throughout here call homework practice. And the reason I'm doing this is because it's not determined by where you do the work, right? So the reason I say this is because my school specifically, we have a built-in remediation period in the day. 4 of the 5 days a week, the students have an additional half hour for each of their classes where they can make up work, or they can make up tests, or they can work on their projects or group work, or if they have to make up some homework, they could do it then. They've got 2 hours a week total, basically, of remediation, things that they can make up work on. So a lot of the students do their homework or practice work during that time. I would also suggest to them, and I do, that they do it during class between things. So, and that doesn't have to be in Spanish class. It could be in another class as well. It could be if they're sitting in the cafeteria before school, get it done then. It doesn't have to be done at home. Just do it at some point in time. That's why I call it practice work. So I'm going to show you some statistical evidence that homework does work. This is evidence that I've collected over the last couple of years. It is primarily on Spanish 1, but there are some anecdotal evidence, not anecdotal, it's statistical, but it's formatted a little bit differently for my other classes as well, and you'll see it. So a lot of what you're going to see looks like this. I'll just show you a chart, and some of the stuff will have are on vocabulary quizzes. Some of them you'll see are on my essential learning outcomes or my master learning topics. Some of them will be just on their overall grades, and I'll point it out to you along the way. So this vocabulary quiz that my Spanish 1 students took in October of 2017, got a grade of less than 50% on their homework, earned about a 50%, just under a 50% average on this vocabulary quiz, whereas the students that had a higher than a 50% average on their homework or practice work earned just under a 100% on that same quiz. That's a huge difference, 50% difference, right? And these are things that throughout the semester, I just put on the board on the next day after the test. Oh, look, the kids that have this grade on their homework earned this grade on the test, and the kids that have this grade on their homework earned this grade on the test. So they could see that it works. Here's another vocabulary quiz the following month. Again, I use the same numbers, so less than a 50 on the homework earned you, around the 60% average on that quiz, and then more than 50% of the homework earned, it looks like just over 100% on the quiz. I like to give extra credit sometimes in vocab. So again, we're talking close to a 50% difference. Another vocab quiz, this is the following year in the fall semester. So those kids that had less than a 75% on their homework earned less than a 50% on a vocab quiz. And then the kids that had higher than a 75 on the homework earned, it looks like around a 75%. So we're still talking about a 25% difference. So this is what I was talking about earlier, like the overall grading class. So in October of last year, my Spanish 1 students that had less than a 60% on their homework overall had about I can't even tell what that is, like a 40% grade in the class, whereas the students that had a higher than a 60% on their homework had, looks like around a B- in Spanish 1 class. So again, with the overall grade in November of last year, the students with less than a 75 on homework were around the 60% in the class. And then with the more than 75% on homework, it looks like they're around the B in the class, so another 20% difference. You'll notice a pattern here, like it's not going to change. The bar on the left is always going to be smaller than the bar on the right. Overall grade in October or November of last year, less than 75 in the homework, you got about a 50% in the class. More than 75, you got about an 80% in the class. We did a test on whatever that date is this year, it looks like, yeah. The kids that had less than 75%, again, you're earning an average of an F on their tests. And the kids that have higher than 75%, looks like you're earning about a B+ or an A- on your test. Another huge difference. The vocab quiz of November of this year, less than 75, it looks like you get about a C- on the quiz, and then more than 75 looks like you got about a B+ or an A-. Overall grade in the class, you can see it again. You have an F if you have less than 75 on homework, and if you have more than 75, it looks like you have about a low B. Same thing. These are just some statistical, it's more data, it's just not in the chart. And some of this data is from my Spanish 2 or 3 classes. And it's just some notes that I took, and I'll kind of show you how these notes work for me. So students who did the top left one, who did 75% or more on their homework passed their ELO at a rate of 20% higher than students who earned less than a 75% on their homework. But beneath that, students that had a C basically or higher on their homework averaged 15% better on that preterite versus imperfect ELO. The October of 2018, at 9 weeks, students with a D or more on their VHL have a 12% higher grade average than those have a less than a D. Top right one, you got students that have passed both ELOs. Those are these mastery learning content, had an average grade of a 60, and then students who failed one or more had an average grade of a 41. It's the same thing. It's always the same blue chart. The lower the homework grade, the lower the score on the test or the quiz or the grade in the class. The higher the homework score, the higher the grade on the test, the quiz, or the overall grade in class. It doesn't change. It's always the same. Without question, the last 2.5 years, it's been the same. The May 3rd, 2019, of all of the ELOs that were failed, 82% of them were failed by students who had less than a C. And then the last one, the day before their lesson 5 test, that was November of last year, students that had a C or better on their homework had a 93% in the class. And students that had less than a C on their homework had an average grade of a C in the class. So we're still talking about a 17% difference there. It's always the same thing. More of the homework that's completed, the higher the grade is in the class. I just want to show you one last thing, and that is kind of how I track this data. It's something I've been doing now for like 5 years, where I record all of the things that the students learn in my class, things I have to learn, and their scores. And I also take notes on them. So let me show you what that looks like. So like, let's say over here, for example, in Spanish 1, we learn the verb ser, to be, and the subject pronouns. And I kind of like to make notes to myself that, I got to reteach something, or next time do more activities where they have to replace the subject pronouns with pronouns, right? So this was I can't remember what year it was. They got a 43% pass rate, which isn't very good. So I must have changed something, because the next year, you can see it over here, the pass rate was at 71%. So we jumped up by like 28%. So all these little orange arrows right here mean that I made a comment on this, this in Google Sheets that I created. It's a good way to kind of track things. I'll put their homework grade along next to their test grade, so I can kind of see how it goes and compare year to year. And so, and I'll show the students, oh, look, you guys earned an average of a 75% on your homework this year, and you did better than last year. Oh, look, they earned an average of a 60% on the homework. Surprise, right? It's always the same thing. The higher the grade on the homework or practice work, the higher the grade of the test, the quiz, the everything. It's always just better, which makes sense, right? The more practice you do with anything, whether it be playing a guitar, or speaking Spanish, or practicing basketball, you're going to get better at it, right? Just how it goes. Hopefully this wasn't too long, but if you have any questions for me, drop them in the comment section. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Hasta luego.